everyone, I hope you are all doing well. Today we're going to be talking about Lesson 10, Antibiotics. So our agenda for the day is going to include the following. First, we're going to be filling in our notes for the lesson using the teacher PowerPoint slide that is attached below, the videos that are embedded in the PowerPoint slide, and the YouTube video that you're watching right now. Number two, you're going to complete the Google form that is attached. There's a link to a video that you're going to watch about the experiments of Florey and Chain and how they came up with penicillin. So you're going to take a look at that video and then answer some questions on the Google form. And finally, you have an antibiotics worksheet where you're going to answer a couple of questions based off of the links that are provided for you and the notes that we're going to take today. So I'm going to ask you to jump into your notes packet, take it out, and we're going to take a look at antibiotics. Now, before we get into the information on the PowerPoint slides, I'm going to ask you to take 2 minutes to watch this YouTube video that does a nice general overview of what an antibiotic is and what antibiotics do in general to help fight against diseases. So again, pause the video, take a look at this video embedded in the PowerPoint slide. Now that you have done that, we're going to take a look at what exactly an antibiotic is. You've probably heard the word before, you've heard the term used, you've probably taken antibiotics for, let's say, a strep throat or some kind of bacterial infection that you might have possibly gotten in the past. But let's now take a look at the exact definition of what an antibiotic is. So an antibiotic is something that blocks processes that occur in prokaryotic cells, not in eukaryotic cells. And remember, bacteria are a type of prokaryotic cell. Viruses lack a metabolism and cannot therefore be treated with antibiotics. So when we think of antibiotics, we have to think about bacteria. So antibiotics is only affecting bacteria, not viruses. So before we jump into the information that we're going to be writing down on our notes slide, I want to quickly give you a visual of what exactly an antibiotic is and what it does. So I have a couple of things here with me. I wish I was with you in class because I have some marshmallows and sweet tarts, some hard candy that I would have loved to give you, but maybe sometime in the future. So we have in front of us a marshmallow, a hard candy, and a toothpick. We are going to present the toothpick to this marshmallow and see what it does. The toothpick is going to be pushed into the marshmallow. Hopefully you can see it, okay? The toothpick has been pushed into the marshmallow, okay? So we now know the toothpick can go through the marshmallow. Can the toothpick go through the hard candy? What do you think? Answer at home. Exactly. No, the toothpick is not going to be able to go through this hard candy. So our toothpick is representing antibiotics. And antibiotics are going to be able to have an effect on bacteria or this marshmallow, right? It's going to be able to go through and attack it. Doesn't make it. There you go. Okay, it's going to be able to go through. However, when we talk about viruses, the toothpick is not going to be able to affect it. So it gives you a nice visual. The toothpick, our antibiotic, is able to go through a bacteria or attack the bacteria, but it is not going to attack a virus. It's not going to work on that. So keep that in your head as we're going through this lesson on antibiotics. So let's go back into our notes and go through what exactly an antibiotic is doing. So antibiotics are designed to disrupt the structure or metabolic pathways in the bacteria or a fungus. So again, not viruses. And we're going to write a couple of points down here of what antibiotics can do. So first off, antibiotics are going to have or can have an effect on the production of a cell wall. Okay, and bacteria, you can see this image here of a bacteria, has a cell wall. So if an antibiotic destroys the cell wall, you're pretty much destroying the bacteria. So that's one of the things that an antibiotic can do. The second thing an antibiotic can do is have an effect on DNA replication within a bacteria, which obviously won't have great effects on the bacteria. Third, we're going to have an effect on metabolism or enzyme activity, which you would have heard also in the video. So The enzymes that are being produced, the metabolic pathways that the bacteria needs to survive, are going to be hindered by antibiotics. And our last bullet is going to be protein production. So the protein production in the bacteria is going to be halted by antibiotics. And those are just a couple of things that could occur because of antibiotics having an effect on a bacteria that is infecting your body. So again, antibiotics only affect prokaryotic cells, not eukaryotic cells. And remember that we are eukaryotic. Our cells are eukaryotic. So the antibiotics will not affect our cells. It'll just affect bacteria. But viruses, okay, are going to use our cells as a host. So the antibiotics aren't going to be able to affect viruses. So now on that same slide that you have in your notes packet, on the side here, this is what I did. I just wrote it on the slide. A couple of more facts about antibiotics. So stay on that same page that you're at in your notes. So let's add in that antibiotics are naturally occurring substances obtained by a fungus or a bacteria. And there are actually 4,000 different kinds of antibiotics, which is kind of crazy, but only 50 have proved to be safe to be able to be used. And here, another kind of couple of facts about antibiotics. I'm going to ask you again to just write it on that same page. This one I wrote on the bottom of the page. Antibiotics are effective against bacteria, like we've been talking about, not viruses. So remember, antibiotics are able to block metabolic pathways in a bacteria, but viruses are going to be using a host cell's metabolic pathways. So they won't be affected by antibiotics because antibiotics won't have an effect on eukaryotic cells. And last but not least, how exactly do these antibiotics work? What exactly are they doing? You can just, again, kind of make yourself some space on that same page. We've talked about it before a couple of seconds ago. Antibiotics, again, are going to disrupt metabolic processes in that bacteria, and it's also going to inhibit the formation of a new cell wall during cell division. So again, a couple of things that antibiotics are doing, having an effect and destroying bacteria by possibly destroying the cell wall, possibly having an effect on metabolism, on protein synthesis, on enzymatic reactions that are happening within that bacteria. And that is how it is going to affect the bacteria and kill it. So in the picture, you can see the penicillin is rupturing the cell wall, which will eventually kill the bacteria. And we're going to come back to this picture in just a second when we talk about antibiotic resistance. So now let's take a look at bacteria versus viruses. So now on the next slide of your student notes, we're going to be looking at bacteria versus viruses. Bacteria, okay, are going to be considered living organisms. They're unicellular, they're going to be reproducing on their own, and they need energy. So they have metabolism, they have metabolic processes that they're doing by themselves, and they have cell walls. So you can see a picture here of a bacteria. So that's what distinguishes a bacteria from a virus. So now looking at viruses, viruses are not considered living. They're not made of cells, so they don't have organelles, they don't have a nuclei, they don't have cytoplasm. They cannot reproduce on their own, so they need a host. They do not need energy, and so there's no metabolism there for the antibiotics to even try to attack. And they do not have a cell wall. Again, something that antibiotics are known to do against bacteria. And here is a picture of a virus. Okay, so you can see the difference between the two. So now let's take a look. Now that we know about antibiotics and what they're doing, let's take a look and see why antibiotics don't have an effect on viruses. So now on that next portion of your student notes, you're going to jot down these ideas of why antibiotics don't work against viruses. So viruses, like we've been talking about, use the host cell. So when they get inside a body, they're going to use the body cells, not their own. They can't do anything without the host. Viruses are protected by the host cell structure. Again, antibiotics can't penetrate a eukaryotic cell. Viruses have different metabolic pathways to bacteria, so the antibiotic drugs have nothing to target. And viruses have different structures than bacteria do. Viruses have a protein coat instead of a cell wall. And again, antibiotics attack cell walls. So you might have also heard out in the science world about antibiotic resistance. So let's talk a little bit about that next. So indiscriminate use of antibiotics can lead to this antibiotic resistance. And what I'm going to ask you to do is watch this video about antibiotics versus bacteria. It's a nice short video explaining how exactly a bacteria could become resistant to antibiotics. I'm going to ask you to jot down some of the ideas that we're going to be talking about here on that same page where it says antibiotics are ineffective. But on the very bottom, I'm going to ask you to make your own section for antibiotic resistance. And so how exactly can bacteria become resistant to antibiotics? Let's take a look. So first, antibiotics can become ineffective against bacteria because of a couple of reasons. First off is just evolution by natural selection. So let's say that there is a bacteria in your body that had a mutation in their DNA, and that mutation made them resistant to a specific antibiotic. All of the other bacteria are going to end up dying, but that bacteria is going to be able to survive. And guess what it's going to do? Exactly, it's going to reproduce and therefore make a bunch of these different bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics. And over many generations, multiple resistant strains of bacteria can develop over time. And one that is most commonly known as an antibiotic resistant bacteria is MRSA, the hospital superbug. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that, you can watch the YouTube video on MRSA or look it up and find some information on it yourselves. So now let's take a look at the first ever antibiotic that was made, and that was penicillin. For their work on penicillin, we have a couple of scientists who are very well known for their research. We have Fleming, Florey, and Chain, and they were awarded the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 1945. And they were able to find penicillin, the first antibiotic, to be able to kill bacteria and be used in a human's body to do so. So I'm going to ask you to watch this video, and this video is going to help you out in answering those questions on the Google form that you're going to have to answer. So if you would like to first finish these notes and then come back to penicillin, I would recommend that so you can watch this video and then fill out the Google form. So you're also going to, in that Google form, take a look at the difference between the modern processes of drug testing that are listed here, and you're going to compare it to what the video explains of how Florian, Chain, and Fleming did their experiments and compare the two. So that's what you're going to be doing by on your own for the Google form. Very interesting stuff. This video is also very interesting just to see how exactly penicillin came about. Really, really interesting. And last but not least, we're going to take a look at compare and contrast between antibiotics, antivirals, and vaccines. I don't believe you have a section in your notes, but what I did is just made a little section here for myself and did a brief kind of general overview of the difference between all three of them. For the antibiotics worksheet that you're going to be doing, you're going to be answering a couple of questions between all three different kinds, and you're going to be able to use this link. It's a nice kind of website that just goes through briefly what the difference is between all of them. So after you take a look at that, you'll be able to see that antibiotics, we now know, only affect bacteria, so they're going to be able to kill or have an effect on bacteria in the body. Antivirals, you can think, okay, it has viral in it. What do you think it's going to have an effect on? Exactly, viruses, right? Antivirals are going to have an effect on viruses, and vaccines are going to be, we already talked about, are going to be something that helps your body make an immune response or make antibodies against either a bacteria or a virus. So you're going to take a look more in depthly with this link and this video to help you fill out that antibiotics worksheet. So those are all of our notes for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or join the Google Hangout. Now that you're done taking your notes, I'm going to ask you to come over here and fill out the Google form on Florian Chain and their experiments on penicillin. Very, very interesting topic. It's just so cool. And antibiotics. Worksheet here that you're going to complete based off of the information that we just talked about in today's lesson. So again, thank you so much for joining in. Like and subscribe below, and have a great rest of your day.